Mark Conroy.
Here.
Denise Gibbons.
Here.
Superintendent.
Here.
We have no student rep. I believe we don't have a teacher rep here, but we have a stand-in with some updates. So we can go right into that if you don't mind.
Good evening. We have some news from Clyde Brown and the middle high school. Some Clyde Brown news. The Bear Paw social distancing patterns have been effective and our students really seem to enjoy them. We have continued to adjust our parent caregiver pickup procedures to make it more timely and efficient dismissal process. Clyde Brown students and staff are settling into hybrid learning environment quite well. Lunch and recess appear to be going smoothly and students are getting used to fun, structured activities. Our teachers are doing a tremendous job facilitating student learning in person and remotely. It is great to have students back in the building. And at the middle school and high school, the first week of hybrid learning went very smoothly, and we're on to week 2. Both the middle and high school have been working together to provide the best possible conditions for learning. High school clubs have begun and are meeting during Wednesdays with Zoom links for all participants. Next week will be parent conferences, November 4th and 5th, and there'll be evening conferences, November 12th in the middle school and November 19th in the high school, and we'll be sending out links to parents to sign up for those virtual conferences. And the cafeteria is providing free breakfast and lunch for all students.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone signed in for open session? Perfect. Okay, so we'll go into our action item. We have consideration for approval of the 10-13 school committee minutes.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Catalano.
Make a motion to approve the school committee October 13, 2020 school committee meetings.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. So we're going to skip around a little bit. We have a special guest here. So we're going to go into the Superintendents Report with the Superintendents Award.
I'd like to invite Bethany Steiner and her father up to the table in front. And welcome. So, Bethany is this year's recipient of the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents Certificate of Academic Excellence. Bethany is a leader at Millis High School in every sense of the word, whether it's in the classroom, on the athletic field, or in her extracurricular endeavors. A 3-sport captain, Bethany has been part of 2 state championships in soccer, and last year helped the team get to the state championship game for the 3rd straight year. As a cross-country and track star, Bethany has placed 4th in both the New England and the All-State Championships in the mile and qualified for nationals in the 2-mile in 2018. The Tri-Valley League All-Star also qualified for nationals last year in the mile event after posting a personal best time of 4 minutes and 59 seconds, and also beating her mother's time, I read. Bethany has committed to run for Syracuse University next year. As a straight A student, a member of our Spanish immersion program, and the president of the National Honor Society this past year, Bethany was also selected as the school's recipient of the Harvard Book Award. She has been a member of Common Ground Club, Peer Leaders, the Leo Club, and Chemistry Club, and has been part of our school quiz show team. Though her accomplishments are many, one that truly stands out is her creation of the Happiness Club. Bethany created this club during her sophomore year, and it's quickly become one of the most powerful and impactful groups in our school. Her organizational skills and leadership abilities shine through in this club, and her meetings are something both students and staff eagerly look forward to. During the school closure in the spring, Bethany's Happiness Club meetings provided a lovely way for people to connect and share positive anecdotes and stories to lift people up during a very tough time. From cultivating group participation, she created shared quote boards, photo collages, lists of inspirational movies, comforting recipes, you name it. This club has been a shining light during this difficult time and quickly became a part of the fabric of our school culture. In addition to all of these accolades and accomplishments, Bethany has given back to the community through a long list of community service activities. She's an outstanding role model for our students, a natural leader in our schools, and a most deserving recipient of the Superintendents Award. Congratulations, Bethany. So we have for you two things. A certificate, and we'll come, why don't you come here and we'll do a photo op. And
Not us this time.
the, I
Do
happen
the principal
to,
this-
and Dad, you can
Principal's
come
super
on in
bad.
too.
No, good.
We'll stand 6 feet apart. I happen to have something in my office that I've had for a couple years now that I'd like to present to you because I'm retiring, and I'll pass it along to you. It's a little sign that says, "Today I choose happiness," and this is for you, Bethany, for making such a wonderful impact. So,
Do you have a, did you get a picture?
I don't know.
Can we
have
do a
wide
picture?
angle lens, a
Why don't you do
panorama?
you and Bob and?
Yeah.
What is it, the
you and
principal,
Bob?
the super?
Do a panorama, and then we'll get.
Bob, come in and get in the picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bob, why don't you get in and somebody take it with you and Nancy and the.
Yeah.
COVID edition.
COVID edition, yes.
COVID edition.
Okay, thank you.
Ah,
Thank you so much.
congratulations.
Congratulations.
Great job.
Congratulations.
Okay. So if you want, we can jump back up to the order and go to the chairman's report, so the back to school updates. Am I going to turn that over to you guys?
Okay.
Just an update on how we're doing.
So I have a different order, but I'll just,
Oh,
actually, if
sorry.
I may go through, it's the October enrollment.
Sure, that's fine.
Okay, if that's okay. Just so my packet is in order.
Yep.
You have in your packets the October enrollment. We're finding that it's still settling in, a little more movement than usual in terms of, we have 3 more choice students than we did last month, but 6 fewer students overall. So a couple of those I know are students who have chosen to homeschool, but I think by next month it'll probably settle in and be a little more accurate. In fact, in today's meeting with the commissioner, superintendents asked if the Department of Education would consider delaying the SIMS reporting for a month because of all the movement, and they said no. But that they would be working with the legislature because they know there are impacts because of the pandemic, impacts to enrollment across the state. So they'll be working with the legislature on potential funding adjustments. Then in terms of a general update, cohort B, transportation is settling in. Cohort B will be sent out tomorrow, which is Wednesday, our remote day. We still have some people on a waiting list. There's room on a couple of other buses, so transportation is still settling in. But seating charts have been sent over to Clyde Brown, so students at dismissal line up in order in the gymnasium and then fill the buses from back to front. So there are still some adjustments being worked out. Our HVAC has, everything has been repaired that was to be repaired except for one unit that we're still waiting for parts for that unit. As Mr. Mullaney said, there's been an excellent start to hybrid. The students are doing an excellent job following routines, settling in, following the rules. Teachers are doing a phenomenal job. There's been an excellent response rate on the safety app attestation, with only a handful of email glitches that we're working out with families. Sometimes double emails go to both parents in a family, or some missing emails, so those are being addressed. So parents, please contact the school with any problems, or if you have any glitches or are experiencing any problems with that. The principals, the office staff, the nurses, Heidi Manthai and Judy Davies, Jen Starr in the tech team, Dr. Marks have all done a tremendous job on the rollout of the attestation app. We had our first fire drills today for Cohort A. Cohort B will be coming, hopefully if it's not raining too hard this week. And then the last thing I wanted to just repeat is that to mention to all families and students that lunches and breakfasts are free for everybody all year long. So that is, because they're free, the choices are limited. You get served what is available, but we are working on opening up the a la carte section as well for people who would like to purchase more than what's available. But everything is breakfast when you come in the morning is available, as well as lunch all year long. So please take advantage of that. It actually helps our reimbursement from the federal government.
Nancy, is it all calendar year long or school year long?
It was throughout the summer. We served meals throughout the summer. So I don't know if it extends past the fiscal year.
Okay.
But it's definitely all school year long, and then we'll update people if it gets extended.
Madam
you.
Chair,
Ms. Gibbons?
just a question on that one, Nancy. So some people have asked me if they wanted to drive up and pick up meals, do they have to tell anybody? Can they just arrive to pick up? What's the best way for people to know, to help them staff?
Yeah,
Where do they go?
It would be best if they let us know in advance, but they could just drive up. It is available to any family in town, so if a family is staying remote or even attending a private school, it is available. And the pickup is around behind sort of by the superintendents in the gym office. If you go there, that's where food service has a door. So they can, on our website, they can contact Sean Fallon, they're our Director of Dining Services, or just call. Just call and we'll get you the information.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I did notice the signs when, just even pulling into the parking lot this evening, there's a sign that directs people to the right door.
And
for picking
people
up.
can pick up meals for the weekend. So that is, there's all kinds of options, and they can take meals to go for the weekend, or for the time that, if they're hybrid, for the time that they're remote. So we're happy to work with families on that.
Perfect.
And then A budget update, Mr. Wigan?
So fortunately, about 6 days ago, I finally got into Munis, which is good on several levels, and one of them is, of course, I can now give you budget updates on a regular basis. You had really 4 documents, I guess, so a lot of stuff to unpack. So let's start with the operating budget. And to that degree, I gave you sort of 2 projections. The first is sort of pre-fall town meeting. And it's good news, but it's conservative news, to say the least. Is that right now, before we get into the fall town meeting and what might happen, is I'm projecting a general fund balance of a little over $40,000. Now, we are anticipating that we know there's a warrant article that would add $256,703 and change to the school budget, which is badly needed. Now, that's the good news. The not so good news, okay, is that there is an estimated $235,000 in the second half of the year that right now we would project with additional labor costs and potential deficits in several of our revolving funds due to, issues that we face with the coronavirus. Now, even if those things happen, if we get the additional funding, we would still anticipate that we'd actually end with a fund balance at the end of the year of $62,000 and change. That again is good news. We're in the positive. However, we are used to having fund balances significantly higher than that allow us to prepay tuitions, that allow us to do other things to manage our budget, and that number simply won't allow us to do what we've done in the past. So it is going to impact our budget preparation process, and as we start to get into that. So it's sort of a good news, bad news. We're not in deficit, and frankly, there are districts around the state that are facing that. But we're also not necessarily in great shape as we start to think about the FY22 budget. Let me stop there and ask, if there are any questions.
Yes, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Wigan, we have a $16 million, $16.4 million budget.
Yes.
Help me with what you mean, because I don't think this has ever been projected like this. We have a general fund balance of 40,000. What does that mean?
That means that after we expend all of the different lines
In the operating budget.
in the operating budget,
Okay.
and I would say we expend all the lines, there's also going to be savings in some of those lines. Okay, so it's both. So at the end of the year right now, I would project that we would end up with a bottom line balance of $40,000.
Okay, I understand. So this is where we look on June 30th, as we sit here tonight, it'll be
Correct.
40,000. And something could change.
Correct. And, oh, absolutely.
We could have a warm winter, we could have
Absolutely.
some sort of savings, and it could go up. Okay.
Absolutely.
All
This is, and I should say that, it's a very good point that you raise. When you're doing this in September, October, November, there is a degree of crystal ball gazing. These are statistical models, and statistical models are great to a point. But obviously, a lot can change in the next several months.
So
and
really
weeks.
I didn't see ending. I didn't understand that this is a projected ending balance.
Yes.
Okay. Because there's other hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars that have already been expended.
Right,
Okay,
correct.
all right, fair enough, thank you.
Mr. Conrad?
So, one question, this is helpful. One thing I think that we can, maybe helpful as we get to 2021 is, obviously, we have no clue what school year and staffing requirements would be, but knock on wood, maybe we're some semblance of not this hybrid model when we open up next September. One thing that I think will be helpful for us is getting the revenue built in this November that's going to be built in. That should be included in our base funding going forward for next year. So the extent that we are using, 107, basically 230 of that 256,000 to cover, in essence, costs due to COVID, whether it's fund deficits that we, just because of services we have to provide without the normal revenue stream, or additional staffing that we've had to bring in to adapt to a COVID staffing model. Much of that will hopefully go away, but the revenue should not be going away. So
Correct.
while we may be ending the year, again, based on, as we sit here today, only 60,000, which doesn't cover us for what we normally pre-spend, we may be able to use some of that money, some of this 250,000 as additive to cover some of that in the fiscal year budget. So
That,
I think it's important as we go through and get into next year that the revenue that comes into the budget in November, as long as town meeting approves it, stays as the base, in our base for when we build and we talk about revenue allocation and funding starting for fiscal 22.
If those charges or if those costs are ongoing, correct?
No, the revenue, so the revenue coming in, so the 256,000 that we are getting needs to be in our base level funding for fiscal 22.
And
right, I understand what he's suggesting. He's basically saying that as you prepare
Who,
your
me or
budget.
him?
Say what?
Mark.
What
No, you
Mark
said-
is saying.
It's hard to hear over here, that's all.
Yeah, what
That
Mark is,
fan
what
blast.
Mark is saying
Fan
is that when you start with your base, and assuming we work with a 4% increase, that the base should include what has been added in the fall town meeting,
The 256.
the 256.
Right.
Am I correct in stating what?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I understand that concept, and,
But a ton, but.
but my
230
point
of
is if
these
there are
costs should go
truly
away.
one-time purchases,
Right, 230 of it, 230 of this, which is down at the bottom. Labor costs not covered by the grant, transportation, food, all these fund deficits are all a function of COVID scenarios that would go away. So while we're using that, we're using 230,000 of this 256 to cover COVID scenarios in fiscal 21. Those scenarios would go away in fiscal 22, freeing up the 230,000
Correct.
to go towards the out-of-district sped costs that we won't have the money to prepay.
We would certainly hope so. The other thing that I should note, and it was just a note, but I don't want to understate it. Right now, this assumes that there's no other stimulus money. And I think that probably everybody expects something is going to happen after January, regardless of how the election turns out. So without prejudicing anybody either way, that some kind of bill happens and some kind of money comes back to cities and towns, great or small. So that also may have a positive impact in reducing what the general fund budget has to deal with some of those numbers that right now we're projecting we have to deal with in our operating budget. Other questions on the operating budget? If not, I'm going to move on to the CVRF grant. That's the single page probably the easiest thing I sent you to read. If I can find it myself here. Let's see here. So basically, this was something that we applied for a grant. We had certainly a concept of what we were going to spend. And then we had what I would say was a very positive meeting with the town where they looked at it and said, listen, the CARES grant doesn't have a whole lot of flexibility for staffing. But our grant has a lot of flexibility for stuff. Particularly stuff that goes to things like air quality and technology and those types of things. So they suggested several things that we could move to the town CARES grants. And you see those in transfers in a new column that's in green to the tune of $110,000. That we would actually move out of this grant through amendment, well, not through amendments in the move, but we would simply charge them to the CARES grant. We would then amend this grant appropriately, and we've suggested in items 12 through 18 some of the additional things that we would look to then put towards this grant. So for example, we know that we're going to need some additional custodians. We've now lived with this a little bit. We're going to need additional custodians during the day to help with our disinfecting. We know we're going to need some additional technology help. There's a lot of technology issues we need to deal with, and we have engaged some part-time help. 2 students who have worked with us for, they started off for years helping us in the summer. They're now both in school, but remotely, so they can help us out during the day. So these are well-trained individuals in our system. So they're helping us out. So again, that's a good thing for us. We've talked about safety monitors for, whether it's manning doors or watching bathrooms, or there's a number of different things during the day. I put additional personnel as a placeholder because the administrative team didn't have a chance to look at this, but I kind of just keep hearing anecdotally that this pops up, that pops up. We maybe need another sub or something like that. So that's why I put that number in there. There is some additional technology needs that are popping up. So for example, the nurses are regularly calling people with relation to the screening app. We didn't want them calling from their personal phones for obvious reasons. So right now we have them having cell phones to do that. That would be a charge that would go here. Okay. The preschool wrap has started, and this is a charge we can put against this money, at least through December 31st. And there's also some additional hours, again, the nurses are using, particularly on Sundays, for the screening. We can put those hours in this as well. Again, staffing hours that we can put here that we could not apply to the town grant. And again, the administrative team, when they get a chance to look at this, may have some other thoughts as well. But those are some of the things. And then one of the things that's not here, but I think I mentioned to Nancy and John the other day, is tents came up again. And got a price from a fellow business administrator. I think it was about $7,000 a tent. And you'll see that balance there of $21,000. So it kind of popped into my mind saying, well, you know what, we could buy 3 tents. And then we would have our covering for outside. There are still some logistics you have to go through locally with building code and whatever, but for the most part, where they're difficult, most of the times you can get through them. So that's maybe number 19 that's not listed here on your sheet of paper, but has popped up in the last 24 to 48 hours. So that's the story behind this particular grant. Any questions here?
Mr. Conroy?
Just to clarify, are we moving forward with these items 12 through 18 if they're deemed necessary? Like, are we waiting for any approval on funding for these, or are we just?
We're moving.
Okay.
The posting for the custodians is out. The technology is in place. The safety monitors are in place, though we're still hiring some more. No, we're moving on these.
Okay.
We don't really have time to wait around.
No, that's what I
Yeah.
just wanted to clarify. I was just clarifying whether we needed some approval for the
No.
grant or this
No.
was just,
No.
we're already
No, we're going ahead.
executing on them. Yep.
So if there are other questions here, then the third piece would be the CARES grant. That would be that long sheet with great detail to it, which is basically Chief Barrett's spreadsheet. Again, a way to track all of the different purchases that we've made so far that apply to the CARES grant. And you'll notice at the bottom, I simply put in a line that shows a sort of a transfer in of $110,000 from this grant. Figuring, that would be the simplest way to show you this for the moment. You can see a lot of it is really PPE, though the big single expenses probably were the desks. So if you remember the desks, the finance committee, everybody kind of agreed, let's put the desks there, the desk can apply there. There's been no issue with that. So all of those desks we bought for social distancing have been charged to that grant. The other thing, as far as a furniture issue that's been charged to that grant, are the picnic tables for the outdoor classroom. So those have gone there as well. One of the things we'll do before that grant closes, actually before any grant closes, and I think the town's going to do the same thing, is we'll all take a look at our PPE, whether it's shields, gloves, masks, whatever it is, and make one final order probably early December of anything we think we may need, and then place that order and charge it against the grant for obvious reasons, assuming the grant still has money available, and I suspect this grant will. Our sense in our meeting, and Nancy can correct me if I'm wrong, but they still have a lot of availability in this grant. And that seems to be the biggest challenge, I think, that they're facing, is that when the current administration put down new restrictions on this grant, it created some more difficulty in spending down this money.
Any questions on the CARES grant? Okay. I think you're good.
Okay.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty.
Sorry.
Help.
Nancy, did you want to give an update on the extended day, the pre-K?
Other than to say, it has started, and for faculty members, preschool offered also to kindergarten. Jean Noonan and Brenda Kelly are staffing it, and so as we move into this phase, it's very helpful for staff to have that staff of young children, and then we'll update the committee. We'll start to plan for the other phases of opening up extended day.
Any questions from the committee on extended day or? Okay. So we'll move down to the chairman's report. We talked about back to school updates. So high school principal search. So we do, with Bob moving into the superintendent position, we do now have an opening for the high school principal. So if you wanted to, Nancy, I know you were going to give a quick update on the process that is going to happen here.
Right, so we've looked at, because we have recently been through an interim principal search for Clyde Brown when Mr. Phelps retired. We are using that as the basis for job description, but adjusting it to be a high school principal for an interim. And ideally, that person would be in place by December 1st at the latest. If not, if we can have a little overlap time before Mr. Mulaney has to move into down the hall, into the other office, that would be great. So we're posting that, we'll post that this week and seek candidates for an interim principal for the remainder of the year. And then it will, much like we did with Clyde Brown, during the probably spring, April-ish, March, we'll post for the permanent position and go into a search process, much like we did at Clyde Brown for, with full community input into what a permanent high school principal would be, staff forum, parent forums, et cetera, and seek a permanent principal.
Perfect. Any questions on that? Okay. Just wanted to go over the school committee future meetings that we have on here. So for the remainder of the year, so we have 2 scheduled in November, 2 in December. November looks like is improvement plans will be presented. December 1st is also has improvement plan, so middle school, and then December 15th is the high school improvement plan. But also just to let everyone know that we were approached by a group of I guess former students and current students to start a conversation around the mascot, the Millis mascot, using the mohawk. So right now we are scheduled to have that discussion on December 1st, and of course invite anyone from the community that would like to take part of that in that conversation to reach out to us, and we can make some arrangements to have people in. So again, that is scheduled as of now on our schedule for December 1st.
Madam Chair,
Ms. Gibbons?
just a question on that, more for the community. So on December 1st, am I right that there'll be a presentation from an outside group to the school committee and that there won't be a decision made that evening? Or is it fair to say, I'm trying to set the expectation for the community that what's happening on the 1st and then what, if anything, might follow?
Yes, thank you. So December 1st is a presentation, and we will, of course, hear out the presentation. Any further action, at that meeting, we can discuss with the community and just sort of lay out any future discussions. But you're right, there would be no vote on that day, but we would have the discussion around if there is a need to have a vote in a future meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. We have no old business or new business on here. There's no correspondence. We do have a executive session scheduled, so unless anyone has any announcements, then I will take a motion to go into executive session. Ms. Briggs?
I make a motion to move into executive session for negotiations, contract negotiations, not to come back to open session.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I believe this is a roll call vote. So Robin?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Denise?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Steve.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.